What is up, everybody? We are back with another absolutely insane video. Today we are diving headfirst into something that's gonna make your brain do a backflip. Have you ever experienced something so bizarre that it made you question reality? Like seriously, you stop and think, hold up, did that actually just happen or am I losing my mind? Because if you have, you are not alone. The world is full of these weird, unexplainable moments that people call glitches in the Matrix. We're talking about those little blips in the system, those moments where reality itself seems to stutter and you're left just staring into space wondering what on earth is going on. Today, we're diving into 10 glitch in the Matrix stories that will leave you wondering if we're living in a simulation. I've scoured the deepest, darkest corners of the internet. I've read hundreds of these, and I've picked out the absolute wildest ones for you guys. We're talking stories that are so out there, so unbelievable, they'll have you second-guessing everything. From seeing people who shouldn't exist to objects vanishing into thin air, these aren't just your average spooky tales. These are experiences that suggest maybe, just maybe, the world around us isn't as solid and predictable as we think it is. So buckle up, grab your tinfoil hats, just kidding, mostly, because things are about to get weird. We're going to explore stories that will challenge your perception of everything. Are these genuine tears in the fabric of our universe, or just incredibly strange coincidences? I don't know the answer, but what I do know is that these stories are absolutely mind-blowing, and I cannot wait to share them with you. Make sure you stick around to the end, because each story gets crazier than the last. Let's go! Alright, kicking things off with a classic, but this one has a twist that is absolutely bonkers. Imagine you're just going about your day, maybe grabbing a coffee, minding your own business, and then BAM! You see, yourself. Not like, oh, that person kinda looks like me. No, I mean an exact carbon copy. This first story comes from a user who was on vacation in a completely different country, thousands of miles from home. They were exploring a crowded market, taking in the sights, when they saw someone across the square who made them do a double take. It was them. Same hair, same clothes they'd worn the day before, even the same weird way they fidget with their backpack strap. They were completely frozen, just staring as this other them bought a piece of fruit from a vendor, smiled, and then just casually walked off, disappearing into the crowd. They tried to follow, shouting, but it was like this double just vanished into thin air. They spent the rest of their trip looking over their shoulder, completely freaked out, wondering if they'd hallucinated the whole thing. But the detail that gets me, the thing that makes this so unbelievably creepy, is that when they got back home and unpacked, the exact outfit their doppelganger was wearing was missing from their suitcase. How do you even begin to explain that? It's like the simulation just copy-pasted them for a second. Next up, we're bending time itself. This story is about a dude who swears he experienced a genuine time slip, not just a flash, but a full-on, interactive moment from what he thinks was the future, or maybe a parallel present. He was driving down a familiar stretch of highway, one he'd driven hundreds of times. It was a normal Tuesday afternoon, nothing out of the ordinary. Suddenly, the scenery around him just changed. The cars on the road looked different, more futuristic, sleeker. The buildings alongside the highway were taller, more modern, with designs he'd never seen before. Even the radio station he was listening to started playing music that sounded completely alien to him, like nothing he'd ever heard. He said it only lasted for maybe 30 seconds, but it felt like an eternity. He was so disoriented, he almost swerved off the road. Then, just as suddenly as it started, everything snapped back to normal. The familiar cars, the old buildings, his usual radio station. He pulled over, heart pounding, trying to process what just happened. He even checked his dash cam later, but the recording just showed a normal drive, no weird futuristic stuff. It was like he'd momentarily phased into a different timeline. Imagine seeing a glimpse of a world that doesn't exist yet, or exists somewhere else entirely. That's next-level reality-breaking stuff right there. Okay, this next one is something many of us have probably experienced in a small way, like losing your keys only for them to turn up in a super obvious spot. But this story takes it to a whole new level of weirdness. A woman tells this story about her favorite coffee mug. It was a unique, handmade mug she'd gotten as a gift, totally irreplaceable. One morning she made her coffee, put the mug on her bedside table, went to the bathroom for literally 2 minutes, and when she came back the mug was gone. Not knocked over, not hidden under a pillow, just completely vanished. She searched her entire apartment top to bottom for weeks. It was like it had just dematerialized. Fast forward 3 months. She's visiting her sister who lives in a different city about 200 miles away. They're catching up and her sister goes to make tea. And what does she pull out of her cupboard? The exact same mug. Her sister swore she'd never seen it before, said it just appeared in her cupboard one day and she assumed it was one she'd forgotten she owned. There was no way it could have gotten there. the original owner hadn't visited in over a year. It's like the object teleported, or the simulation's asset placement just bugged out and dropped it in the wrong location. How else can you explain a mug traveling 200 miles on its own? Absolutely wild. Chapter 4. Trapped in a Deja Vu Nightmare. You know that weird feeling of deja vu where you feel like you've lived a moment before? Well, imagine that feeling but on steroids, repeating over and over again like a broken record. This story comes from someone who experienced a terrifying deja vu loop. They were at work having a pretty normal conversation with a coworker by the water cooler. Standard stuff. Then, as the coworker started a sentence, they knew exactly what they were going to say, word for word. And not just that, they knew what their own response would be, what the coworker would say next, the whole exchange. It played out exactly as they remembered. Freaky, right? But it gets worse. A few minutes later, the exact same scenario started again. Same coworker, same approach to the water cooler, same opening line. It was like a scene in a movie was being replayed. This happened 4 times in a row. Each time they tried to change something, say something different, move away, but it was like they were stuck on a predetermined track. By the 4th loop, they were visibly panicked, and their coworker finally noticed something was wrong, which seemed to break the cycle. Can you imagine the sheer terror of being stuck in a tiny loop of time, unable to escape? It's like your personal reality program just crashed and rebooted over and over. Chapter 5. Phone call from the other side. This next one sends actual chills down my spine. We all get spam calls, wrong numbers, but what about a call from someone who, well, shouldn't be able to make a call? This story is about a person whose grandmother had recently passed away. They were obviously grieving, going through a tough time. A few weeks after the funeral, their phone rings. It's an unknown number, but they answer it anyway. On the other end, it's static mostly. But then, clear as day, they hear their grandmother's voice. Not a recording, not something vague. Her distinct voice saying their childhood nickname, something only she called them. They were so shocked they dropped the phone. When they picked it up, the line was dead. They tried calling the number back, but it said the number was not in service. They checked their phone records, everything. There was no logical explanation. Their grandmother's phone had been disconnected. How could she possibly call? Some might say it's grief, imagination, but the caller was adamant about the clarity of the voice and the specific nickname. It's one of those stories that makes you wonder if there are echoes, or if somehow connections can be made beyond what we understand. Super, super creepy and definitely a glitch if I've ever heard one. Chapter 6. The same stranger kept appearing everywhere. Okay, this one is less about a single moment and more about a pattern that is just too coincidental to be, well, a coincidence. Imagine seeing the same random stranger multiple times in one day, in completely different, unrelated places. Not someone who looks similar, but the exact same person. This person shared that they were running errands all over their city. First, they saw a very distinct-looking man, unusual hat, bright green scarf carrying a specific worn briefcase at their bank. Then, an hour later, at a grocery store miles away, the same man was in the checkout line ahead of them. Weird, but maybe he's running errands too, right? But then, later that afternoon, they went to a park on the complete opposite side of town to walk their dog, and guess who was sitting on a bench, reading a newspaper? Mr. Green Scarf and Briefcase. And the final straw? That evening they went to a movie, and as they were leaving the theater, the same man walked past them in the lobby. 4 completely different locations spread across a large city over a 10-hour period. It's like this NPC, this background character in their simulation, just kept getting respawned in their vicinity. There's coincidence, and then there's this. It's enough to make you feel like you're being followed by a glitch. Get ready for this one because it's about the very fabric of your surroundings just changing. This story comes from someone who woke up one morning and felt like something was off in their bedroom, but they couldn't quite place it. They got up, went about their morning routine, and it was only when they came back into the bedroom to get dressed that they realized what it was. A window was missing. Not just covered up or boarded over. A window that had been on one wall of their bedroom for the 10 years they'd lived in that house was just gone. It was now a solid plain wall, painted the same color as the rest of the room. No sign a window had ever been there. They were completely baffled. They asked their family if anyone had done any sudden unannounced renovations overnight, which of course they hadn't. They even checked old photos of the room, and yep, the window was definitely there before. It was like the room's blueprint in the simulation had been updated, and that asset was just deleted. They said for weeks they'd instinctively glanced towards where the window had been. How does a whole window just cease to exist without a trace? That's not just a minor glitch, that's a full-on environmental rewrite. Absolutely mind-boggling stuff, you guys. This next story is like something out of a horror movie, but it happened in real life, or so the teller claims. Imagine taking a road you've driven down hundreds, maybe thousands of times, a route so familiar you could drive it with your eyes closed, though, don't do that. And suddenly, it leads you somewhere completely new and utterly alien. This person was driving home from work on their usual route, a country road they knew like the back of their hand. But one evening, as they rounded a particular bend, the scenery was wrong. The familiar trees were gone, the fields looked different, and up ahead, they saw the lights of a small town they'd never seen before. Curiosity mixed with a weird sense of unease, they drove into this town. The architecture was old-fashioned, almost like a movie set. There were shops but no signs they recognized, and hardly any people around. The few they did see just stared blankly. A deep sense of dread washed over them, and they floored it, getting out of there as fast as they could. Once they hit a familiar landmark a few miles later, they pulled over, completely shaken. They've tried to find that road, that turnoff, that town again, multiple times, even using GPS, but it's like it was never there. It just doesn't exist. A temporary pocket dimension, a glitch in the map data, whatever it was, it's terrifying. Okay, this one isn't about seeing something weird, but about someone saying something so specific and out of the blue that then comes true. It's about an uncanny prediction that will make your skin crawl. This story involves two friends who were just hanging out watching TV, when one of them suddenly went really quiet and pale. Out of nowhere they said, "There's going to be a big fire downtown tomorrow near the old library. A red truck will be involved and someone will get hurt, but not too badly," just like that, super specific. The other friend was like, okay, that's random and creepy, and they kind of laughed it off. The next day they were at work when they heard sirens, lots of them. Later on the news, there it was. A major fire had broken out in an old building right near the city library. And one of the first images shown on the news report, a fire department vehicle, a red ladder truck, positioned right by the blaze. The news also mentioned a firefighter had sustained minor injuries. Every single detail their friend had predicted, down to the color of the truck and the severity of the injury, was spot on. How? Was it a premonition? A data leak from the simulation's upcoming events log? It's one thing to have a vague feeling, but that level of specific accuracy is just unsettling to the core. Finally, we have a story about missing time, which is one of the most classic and unnerving glitch phenomena. This isn't just losing track of time because you're engrossed in something, this is chunks of your life just vanishing. This account comes from a student who was walking home from a late class. It was about a 15-minute walk, a route they took every day. They remembered leaving the campus building at around 9 p.m. The next thing they clearly remembered was walking through their front door. They glanced at the clock in their kitchen, expecting it to be around 9:15 p.m., maybe 9:20 p.m. at the latest, but the clock read 11:25 p.m. Over 2 hours had just disappeared. They had no memory of anything happening in between leaving campus and arriving home, no feeling of being tired, no signs of having been sidetracked or having fallen asleep somewhere. It was just a blank. They checked their phone, no weird calls or messages. They asked their roommates if they'd seemed out of it, but they hadn't even noticed them come in late. It was like those 2 hours were completely erased from their existence. Alien abduction, a system reboot where their consciousness wasn't saved for a bit. It's the ultimate WTF moment, leaving you to wonder what on earth happened in that void. And there you have it, 10 of the most mind-bending, reality-questioning glitch in the Matrix stories I could find. From seeing your own double to entire chunks of time just vanishing into thin air, these experiences are absolutely wild. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? Are we just living out a pre-programmed existence and sometimes the code gets a little buggy? Are there other dimensions briefly intersecting with ours? Or are these all just incredibly elaborate coincidences, tricks of the mind, and overactive imaginations? I honestly don't have the answers, but exploring these possibilities is what makes it so fascinating. These stories are just a few examples of the strange and unexplainable events that make us question the nature of our reality. They challenge our understanding of how the world works and open up a universe of questions. What if these aren't isolated incidents? What if these glitches are happening all the time, to people all over the world, and most of them just get dismissed or forgotten? The sheer volume of these kinds of anecdotal reports online is staggering, and while we have to take them with a grain of salt, you can't help but feel a little bit of that what if creep in. It's that tiny seed of doubt that makes you look at the world a little differently. So, what do you guys think? Have you ever experienced a glitch in the Matrix? Let us know in the comments below. I want to hear your craziest, most unexplainable stories. Did you see something impossible? Did time bend for you? Share your experiences, because the more we talk about this stuff, the more we realize we're not alone in wondering about the true nature of what's going on around us. Don't forget to smash that like button if this video blew your mind, subscribe for more insane content, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next one. This is Randa Reddit signing off. Stay curious and maybe keep an eye out for those glitches.